Joe presents TKO, together with 32 Red.
Welcome to round 4 of TKO here on Joe, together with 32 Red. This week we're in Bradford to talk about one of the most important issues in the sport of boxing. Carl, we saw most recently Adonis Stevenson, the light heavyweight world champ, suffer brain injury in a contest. And it highlights just once again, although these injuries are few and far between, they're an important topic in the sport of boxing, and that the dangers, as we know, are very real.
Yeah, it's almost a taboo subject, especially amongst boxers and people involved in the game, but it's something that needs to be spoken about. And I'm very interested to speak to the man we're going to speak to today.
And the man we are going to speak to is Jerome Wilson. Had a bleed on the brain in 2014 and has never really been the same since. He's invited us into his home with his partner, Michelle Boyce. Should we go and meet them?
Let's go.
Hello, mate. How are you, Chris? So, for those of you listening, we are now in the house of Jerome and Michelle. Thank you very much for having us into your lovely home.
It's fine.
Let's start off, first of all, you guys have been together for over 10 years. Where did you meet?
Funny one. It's down to you, that though. There was a social media platform called MySpace. Are you familiar with that? Yeah. Basically, she liked my picture and she got in contact with me that way. Yeah, it's true. It's true. So anyway, we got talking and then we just started sharing messages between each other, and we got on. So we decided
we talked for about 9 weeks before we met, didn't we?
Yeah, before we meet up.
Did he play it cool?
Can I just butt in early? That's the exact same story as me and my missus, only not MySpace, Bebo. Remember Bebo?
Was it you did that on Bebo?
A younger version
This is going back.
I don't think I had that one.
You did.
I didn't use it though.
No, but you did have it.
Wow. That's a pretty interesting way to meet.
Yeah.
That's what you said. He said the women are the hunters, didn't he?
Yeah, exactly.
We kind of became
She's the one that made the
friends.
first move. It's true though.
No, it isn't.
Oh,
It's not.
come on. You have to admit.
Yeah, we kind of were talking for about 9 weeks, and then we decided to meet because we got on quite well. So we went to the cinema.
What did you like about him?
And then I never got rid of him. I don't know, it didn't look anything like his picture. I was quite shocked. Because at that time, the profile picture was quite well built and really muscly, and I was expecting this really big man. And when I came, I was like, oh my God, that's not...
The son-off version.
That's not him. But yeah, when he took his top off, his arms were really big, but it was quite deceiving when he had a shirt on. So, yeah.
There we go. And then how long have you been together now?
11 years.
So 11 years later, here we are. So a lot has happened in that 11 years.
Yeah.
When you first met, you were a fighter, but you hadn't turned professional, would you?
That's correct.
Okay.
I was a personal trainer, fitness instructor, sports coach as well.
So what was the first draw of boxing for you?
First time.
What attracted you to the sport?
Well, it was my group of friends that lived around the area of Hyde Park, Wyburn area in Sheffield. They live around there, so a new gym was opening up. So they went to it. They thought, we'll bring Jerome along, ask him if I want to come along with them. So it's probably about 6 of us or so. We went along to the gym, and I fell in love with it. They were showing the ropes, just the footwork, the bags and things like that, and I just thought it felt comfortable, it felt natural, and I found it quite, I don't know, it was it just felt right. Do you know what I mean? It just felt right.
How old were you?
I was 15, going on 16, so I was so late on quite. Well, I was never interested in boxing previous before that. I was always done like martial arts, like karate and things like that. My dad taught me how to do karate because he was a karate instructor back in the day as well. So he's always been interested in fitness and looking after himself and things like that. But that was the first time I went into the gym. It was the trainers was Dave Caldwell and Chris Smedley. So them two had the partnership together. There was a group of lads in there that were very good, very talented. I saw how they were moving about and hitting each other and having a laugh. So there was a buzz. It was like a bit of a family, a family environment where there was no massive egos. There wasn't anything there. But I could say just a lot of good banter, really. And then that's what kept drawing me to it. You know what I mean?
You found that, I know, in the last sort of year or so, the camaraderie and that spirit in a gym is as important as your love for the sport.
Yeah, I loved it when I was an amateur and we were, you know, your teammates, and it was like a family. Like amateur boxing clubs are like, there's so many different types of people coming in and out the door. But in my pro career, I never really had that until the last sort of year and a half, 2 years with Jamie Moore, and I'm really enjoying it. Like good guys around, good funny guys, and the camaraderie is I think that's something that I would miss when I decide to hang them up, you know.
Yeah.
I suppose the one thing you guys have got in common as well is you got very supportive other halves, and you know we talk about how difficult a fighter's journey is, but we don't often hear about how difficult it is for the partners of fighters. And I can always remember seeing Melissa Guzman, Miguel Cotto's wife, the like emotional roller coaster she had to go on because of the kind of career and kind of fighter he was. And you said how difficult it was for Christine in the Josh Warrington fight, because that was your toughest fight to date. How did you feel when, I guess there's a point you had a discussion that he was first going to turn professional?
To be fair, back then I didn't really think too much about it. To be fair, I didn't really, let's say I didn't know what I was letting myself in for. I thought it was just going to be like a hobby type thing that, and to be fair, with the fights, they weren't that bad up until the Serge fight, and that's when I sat back and thought, I don't like this.
Is that the first one?
That was brutal.
The first fight?
Yeah, the first fight.
So for people that don't know, of course, the man that ended up injuring you with the injury you have now, you had 2 fights with him. So Serge Ambomo,
Correct.
Cameroonian fighters?
Yeah, Cameroon. I think he boxed in the Olympics, and then he overstayed. So he stayed here with a group of other competitors.
He defected, didn't he?
Yeah, defected, that's it. And he managed to gain is it asylum?
Right.
Yeah, he managed to gain asylum, yeah.
So he was here in Sheffield as well, and you guys met, and that was a 6-rounder. Very close, very good fight, that first one.
It's competitive.
For the fans it was.
For the fans, of course, and that's where we need to make the distinction, because I can remember seeing an interview with you where you said that was the first time when he came home, and there was real... To talk to me about the aftermath of that.
He couldn't even take his clothes off, it was that bad. I had to take his clothes off, lay him on the bed and go out and buy like Epsom salts for the bath. It was absolutely battered. But he didn't look it, but his body, and there were like, I don't know, bruises, like whip marks and bruises all over his back.
And rope burns.
And he just, that's the first time I've really seen any kind of injury. In every single fight, it's never been where I've been like, you know, wincing behind people, or he might have a little bit of a mark on his lip, or maybe a bit of a swollen eye, but nothing that made me scared.
And that was the first time you...
That was the first time.
With that fight, I fought a different type of fight. All previous fights, I was always taught to hit and not get hit. So move around, land my shots, be more of a thinking fighter. But I think they say styles make fights, don't they? And it was like, with his kind of style, I was moving around. The first round, totally outboxed him. The second round, I got a bit drawn in. He was very strong. So when I was landing the shots, he had a massive head.
He was huge, wasn't he, for the weight?
Solid. And yeah, I gave away £5 for that fight, actually, in the first one. But when I was throwing the shots, I was just basically bouncing off him. I've got a bit of force behind my punch, but just bouncing off him. I did drop him in the first round. They recorded it as 1 knockdown, but I did get him twice. But it was like toe-to-toe, a lot of action. There was a lot of shots were being thrown. Both of us were landing. And it was just a bit of like it was like one of them edgy seat kind of fights.
Yeah, I think for me, I mean, fans will probably disagree, but for me, I think he did enough to walk away from that. I don't think he needed to rematch. And I said that at the time. I didn't feel he needed to rematch him because if anything, I thought that were a draw, if not a win for him. I didn't think, looking at the fight, I don't think I need to revisit that fight.
You felt he had nothing left to
enough.
prove.
Yeah, I thought he'd done enough to walk away from that.
But it's the fighter's mentality, as you know, if you lose a close fight that you feel you could win, you just have to presumably make amends.
I think so. Well, I lost my last fight that wasn't close. I was beat pretty convincingly, but if I got offered to fight tomorrow, I would take it again. And I think that's just something that's inside fighters. I know my wife wouldn't be very happy about that, and similar to what you're saying. But that's something that we've got in there, and we want to prove people wrong and right or wrong. Yeah.
I think the second time around as well, there was a lot of goading, weren't there, on social media?
That was his partner at the time.
You know, so it was like just trying to wind up the situation. But I didn't think it needed to be revisited, personally.
And of course, in hindsight, you know that decision in your head is vindicated, right?
No, it changed everybody's lives, didn't it?
So let's talk about the night. I know you obviously don't have any memories of the fight itself, but you've watched it back, presumably.
Yeah, I've watched the fight back.
It was 4 months later, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was like the rematch. The fight, I have no recollection of the fight whatsoever. But when I've been given a copy of the actual fight, I had to watch it just to see how I was fighting, how the fight went on, and how my life nearly came to an end, basically. I just wanted to see it. So watch the fight. It's like watching. It was like watching somebody possessing my body, because normally I remember different parts of a fight. I don't remember every single thing. It's like a bit of a blur. But when I was watching that fight back, it was like, that's not me. It's not me. I was thinking, why didn't I move this way? Why didn't I move that way? And I was like, critiquing myself. And it was quite I don't know, hard to watch, but at the same time, it was necessary.
We were talking about the difficulties of you watching your fights, the ones you've lost for the first time.
Yeah, I think it's easier to watch the ones that you've won. I lost to Santa Cruz. It took me a number of months to watch. I still haven't watched the Warrington fight, which I'm sure I'll have to do at some point, but it just feels at this point it's still a little bit raw, so completely understandable where you're coming from.
So there were concerns that you had going into the fight, and you sent some messages to your stepson.
Yeah, that's correct.
Beforehand. I mean, am I right in saying that part of those concerns that you had were because of some of the damage you sustained in that first fight? You feel you had a sixth sense that something might not be right?
The mind is a powerful thing, and I'd never done that before. Never done that before.
You were going into quite a hard fight, didn't you?
I knew, but at the same time, I know I prepared well for it. And at the same time, I thought also, I said my boxing ability and being able to maneuver and move around the ring and outbox. I thought we were going to outbox him still, throughout. It was, anyway, I had no fear or anything whatsoever, even knowing that the first fight was a very brutal fight. But I just had to send him the message. Just to, I don't know.
I think it's because he had people close to him as well that didn't want him to do it, and we've never said anything before. That's the first time I've ever said, I don't want you to do this one.
Okay, what did the
because
message...
I was pregnant as well at the time.
Right.
So I kept having really funny dreams, and I dreamt that this fight had taken place, and he'd end up really poorly in hospital.
My God.
And I woke up in the middle of the night and rung him and said, I really don't want you to do this fight. So I think he added pressure as well from me saying I didn't want him to do it. I think your mum were a bit against it, weren't she?
So this message, you sent a text to your
stepson? Yeah, Calvin. It was just basically just saying if anything was to happen to me, just got a long story short, just make sure you step up and you do well. Cause I said I've been hard on you in the past, because I want to teach him the right from wrong. He was only young at the time, so it's just, I just wanted him to just basically just make sure that everybody's looked after. Do you know what I mean? If something bad was to happen to me. And I can't get my head around why I went into so much detail in the message. I don't understand it. But at the time, it was just one of the things you just do. Do you know what I mean? I just did it.
We've spoken about, I've always said to you, do you ever fear the outcomes of boxing, and you've always said, you know, you can't, because if you did, you wouldn't get in there in the first place. But is there ever a moment before you fight, whether in fight week or on the night, that you just have that kind of moment with Christine and the kids, just in case?
It always gets a bit lovey-dovey and stuff with your missus, and you send nice messages and she'd be nice back. And I think fighters are in their frame of mind going into a fight. Obviously they're focused on winning, but I don't know about other fighters, but you just don't believe it can happen to yourself. You know what I mean?
That's correct.
And it can happen. As you know, we're sitting here talking to you today, and it's happened to you. But you just think, right, and you feel sorry and you feel sad when it does happen, but you just don't believe that can happen to you. And I think everyone probably thinks along those lines. Every fighter.
I think the families think that as well.
Yeah.
I would never have thought this would have happened. Never.
Yet you worried about it.
I worried because I thought it would get hurt from the first time, but not in that league.
So you talk me through the fight as you remember it, if it's for to do so.
Yeah.
It was in the 6th round that it happened. So what? I mean, the floor is yours, really. Talk me through what you remember of that 6th round.
Probably from the 2nd round, I wanted him out of there. I said to everybody, you need to get him out of there. Because he'd gone down, and he'd gone down face first on the 2nd round. And that's the first time I've seen him do that in the whole time. So I was like, this ain't gonna end well, you need to get him out. Why ain't anyone throwing towel in? It shouldn't be carrying on. And of course it was our daughter's first time that we'd taken her to see a fight. She was 3 at the time. I was pregnant, and I also had my eldest son with us, and my dad. So from the 2nd round, I was kind of not comfortable watching it. I was kind of like trying to shield her, because she didn't like it at that point. She were, obviously it's her dad, she'd seen him, and I was just trying to kind of mask, you know, that it wasn't that bad, he'd just fallen over. And then obviously the fight progressed, and it got into the 6th round, and all I could think was, just please hurry up and ring that bell. And I think we were so close to that bell. And that next minute, it was just chaos. He'd obviously gone down, but at that point, because I was quite far away from the ring, I couldn't see through the crowds of people where he was or what had happened. So I'd given my little girl to my son to keep hold of, and I tried to run up to the ring, and I got stopped by Ross Birkinshaw and his wife Nicola, and he kind of grabbed hold of me and said, no, Michelle, come here. And then next thing, there were just like loads of people. There were medics, trainers, security men, and you just couldn't get anywhere close. I don't know, and it just seemed like time stood still for quite a while. And then they stretchered him out into like a private kind of ambulance at the back. And the security men were there, and they were saying that only one person could go with him. So there was me, his mum and his brother. So we all kind of said, you know, let his brother go, because he were slightly calmer than what we were. And I obviously needed to find my other kids, because I'd just left them and ran. And then it was just like absolute chaos when I walked back through the arena type thing. The crowd was just going mad against the people that had come to see Serge. And because at that time, I mean, I don't know if you've seen the fight, I didn't know at the time what he'd done, because I didn't see that. But obviously the crowd had seen what he'd done afterwards. So the crowd was going absolutely mental, and I was just trying to get through them to get to somebody that could take me to hospital to follow him up. So yeah, it was, I don't know, it was really surreal. It was just like you're placed in a situation, but it's like nothing's moving.
And those next 7 days are then unbelievably kind of tense for you because you have no idea.
No.
So you mentioned the celebrations that Serge made. There's a young fighter called Teofimo Lopez who won in a quite emphatic fashion 4 or 5 weeks ago now, and sort of made inappropriate celebrations, and he was under a lot of criticism from that. I remember Steve Bunt saying, you know, those kind of celebrations should be reserved for the dressing room after you know a fighter's safe.
Yeah.
He obviously didn't know what had happened to you and what had gone on, but his celebrations were inappropriate nonetheless.
Definitely. From what I was told, and I've seen the footage, I was gone. So I looked dead. When I remember watching myself, and when I landed on that canvas, I said to myself, that person looks dead. How I landed, and my head bounced, and I just laid still, had my gums chilled in my mouth. And then for him to come over to me, to a body that's on the canvas, my eyes weren't open. It leans over, kisses my forehead, then he just does the cutthroat gestures to the crowd. I've got my mum in the arena, I've got my brother, I've got my partner, I've got my daughter, I've got other supporters there. And for them who care for me, for them to actually witness somebody actually doing that in a sport, professional sport, I'm talking about it now, it's sickening. Yeah. I could never do that myself to any other fighter. I've never done it. I've knocked somebody out badly, sparring in a fight. I could never just jump up and down when someone's being badly knocked down like that. It's unforgivable.
Different type of people, though. I couldn't do that.
What's your first thought when you if you knock somebody out? What's the first thing you think?
I don't know what the first. I suppose it depends on the fight, but if someone's visibly really hurt, bad, lying, eyes closed, the last thing you do is celebrate. Really, I think the Lopez one that you were talking about. I think a bit was made of it. I don't think it was as bad as what was made out to be. But that I haven't seen the celebrations from Serge, but from what you're saying, it sounds absolutely disgraceful.
More importantly, though, it stopped medics getting to him at that vital time when he needed oxygen. He was in the way, showboating when he needed medical attention. It took, someone to grab hold of him and push him aside and say, "What are you doing? What are you doing?"
Moved him away.
Did you think he died at any point?
No. I wouldn't allow myself to think that.
Yeah. So you're hanging on to that, whatever you can in that week after, in the moments after?
Yeah, I mean, of course I was scared. I was terrified. But I don't know whether it was because, obviously Jerome wrote a book and we spoke to a publisher at the time when his book was getting printed. The dream that I'd had before this fight took place, he was obviously at hospital in a coma, and I'd kissed his head and said to him in the dream, "Don't you dare leave me." And just before the dream ended, he woke up and he was obviously hurt and injured and very, very poorly, but he was alive. And for some reason, when they took me to see him before they transferred him across for surgery, I just felt I had to do the same, because I thought in my head the same outcome will come. If I don't do that, it could be different.
It's like you'd seen it before.
And they do say that when you're pregnant, you do have really real dreams, and you can have like premonitions of things when you're pregnant. I don't know why. But I'd lived it before in that dream. Very strange.
It's strange on both
Very
parts.
strange.
It's mad.
I know Serge got in contact with you.
Yeah.
This is a while ago now.
Yeah.
And your feelings towards him then, I guess, were understandably, I suppose, soured at the time because of what had happened. Have you any sort of changed thoughts on him? Any sort of thought of forgiveness towards him?
I don't have no feeling towards him. But to him, what I did say to him, I says, the fight happened. I says, well done. I said, congratulations for winning me fair and square. You got the win. I'm sportsmanlike. I said, well done. I says, but the conduct that you showed afterwards, that's unforgivable. I can't forgive that. The fight itself, I've got this injury from boxing. I don't have no animosity towards him for that. My life's changed forever, and it's due to that fight and due to my injury. But still, that's boxing. I knew I'm aware of the risk. You know what I mean? I have to manage the best I can with what I've got. You know what I mean? Still be grateful that I'm still alive. But to forgive that, I find it very difficult, and I am a forgiving person. I am a forgiving person. When someone's sincere and they apologise for what they've done, it's not being sincere really to apologise. It was on social media, he said sorry, but he's not really gone out of his way to try and say, I'm very sorry for what I did. You know what I mean? You don't need to apologise for me getting the injury, like I'm saying. He just needs to. He doesn't have to apologise anymore, really. It's just, man, I don't think I can forgive that. I don't think I can forgive that. Very difficult.
Okay. We were just talking about the original injury because you had a piece of your skull removed to take the pressure off your brain, but that essentially left a kind of an open space where your skull was, and you had that for how long?
For a year. I had to have that skull taken off my head, quarter of my skull, cranioplasty, they call it. So a bit of the bone flap away. And then during that year, it was very, I looked in the mirror and I just saw a big crater in my head. And sometimes I would eat food and I used to see it moving like it was...
That's insane.
It looks like an alien.
Yeah, like aliens trying... Yeah, you've seen Alien where that alien tries to come out of a person's body and it's like moving around. That's how it seemed. But the pain that came with that is surreal, out of this world.
Can you describe it?
It's like everything's all connected. It's like sometimes my jaw would just seize and it would just hold in place. I couldn't eat food. And the pain that I got from that was like paralyzing. It would feel like my brain was gonna explode. It would feel like ants are running up and down my brain. It'd feel like shooting like signals, shooting electric, moving up and down my spine and my head. All different kinds of sensations throughout that all the time. Even to this day, I still have experienced similar kinds of pains, different intensity levels all the time. But it's very hard, do you know what I mean, to look at.
It's the safety as well, isn't it? The safety aspect.
With having it exposed,
he when he left hospital, he had like this hard hat that he had to wear all the time. And it did look like a bit like a jockey cap. It was just like inside it was like really hard plastic to protect his skull. And we did go away not long after the accident because it had already been booked. So we made the decision to go because we all needed a break. But like he couldn't go in the swimming pool. He didn't like wearing the hat because it was so hot on his head. But it was just a safety aspect, you know. When we went on the plane, he took a bit of a funny turn because of the different in pressures. When we went up in the air, the pressure in his head went.
This felt weird.
So when we'd landed at the other side, he was quite poorly. So it was scary because I had a practically newborn baby. Him that was having a funny turn, I had the other kids. I was in a foreign country. I didn't know where the hospitals were if I needed to get him to a hospital.
Did you have no other help with you, just you and your family?
Just us and the kids.
I was treating for epilepsy at the time, so
yeah,
I was at risk of having seizures and things like that. So it was important that I did have that cap on at all times, just in case if I did have a seizure, I didn't want to land and cause another bleed. Do you know what I mean? So it was just them kind of worries. It was just constant worrying all the time. And he did hurt himself once in the house when he didn't have the hat on.
rushed to hospital because he'd banged the part that it wasn't.
I remember the lips going all tingling, all my body, I think I was a bit in shock. All my body was like shaking and seizing and things like that. And I think that was
and
down
just
to
around the
anxiety.
kids, the kids wouldn't think, I think Serena were 3 at the time.
Kids climb all over you, don't they?
Yeah, she threw something and it hit him on the side of her head.
Oh, man.
And just general everyday life were just, it were hard work. It were hard work.
So you've got the metal plate there now. So that's a procedure you had, what, couple of years ago?
2015.
Okay.
So it was, August 2015 I had that, and then I was able to start rehabilitation after that, because I wasn't allowed to have any, gain access to the NHS rehabilitation until I had the actual plate in my head. So it was a long wait, but it's very scary. Still to this day, because I still feel it. So I can feel the bolts, I can feel all the scar, and it doesn't feel, it feels abnormal, obviously, because it's foreign. It's a foreign object that's in my head. So when I'm laying down, and when I'm sleeping, I feel it all the time. It doesn't feel nice at all. But I know it's necessary for it to be there to give my brain that bit more protection. But it's just, I won't shit on my worst enemy to have anything like that. It's horrible.
Like, not long after, obviously he didn't have the plate and we'd just had a brand new baby, he couldn't carry him around or anything. He was frightened to pick him up, and it wasn't like that with us. Obviously, the girl that we've got together, he was quite hands-on, he helped out a hell of a lot, because with the first girl, I'd had a caesarean, so obviously it takes time to recover. With the second little boy, I'd had to have an emergency caesarean that time, so obviously I was trying to recover, but I had him, I had a newborn, I had 4 other children, and it was just chaos. It was chaos, because I was constantly worrying about him. He couldn't obviously take the pressure off me because he couldn't pick because at that time he was on anti-seizure drugs, so he could have had a seizure at any point and dropped the baby, so he couldn't, carry the baby around or care for him or, without me being around. So
that bit of freedom and is gone. Do you know what I mean? It's just, and that bit of security, like confidence and things like this, disintegrates basically because it's not there. So I don't feel, I felt like I felt very broken and weak, and not strong enough to actually do things that I deemed to be very simple and easy and straightforward before.
Just things you take for granted, didn't you, really?
Yeah, the little things become more difficult at times. And it's very hard to explain. You have to experience it first, and when you experience it, you gain a bit of awareness about it. And you know what it means. It can be hard.
So, at what point you were in an induced coma?
Yeah.
At what point did you have any idea that things would be okay, that he would survive? How many days?
I think it was maybe 10 or 11 days.
So how long did that feel?
Forever.
It was touch and go from the start though, wasn't it? So
because after the surgery, the surgeons came in and spoke to us and basically said, it's the worst possible bleed he could have had. And people don't usually make it through this. So it's a case of, we can't say, every 24 hours to 48 hours, we have to kind of live hour by hour. So if you get through the next hour, work towards the next hour. So it went like that for quite a while. I think it was probably about day 10, 11 maybe that they started to try and wake him up. But he didn't tolerate it, so they had to put him straight back under, and they did that 3 times.
When you say he didn't tolerate?
His head, the pressure in his head, which would have resulted in more brain damage if they'd have carried on trying to wake him up because there was too much pressure. So they had to keep, you know, keeping him relaxed and kind of stable enough for him to recover enough to come out of the coma.
In this time, you're going through some pretty interesting experiences, to say the least. I guess very fractured memories is the only way to put it. Just talk to me about what you remember of that time.
So while I was in the coma, it was very, very surreal. It's profound, basically. It's like I have the memory of what actually happened wasn't there when I came through. But while I was in the coma, I had memories like for about 10 to 15 weeks of memories, what I thought of experiences, what I thought I did actually, that I thought happened. So I was in contact with people who I've never seen before, know the names. There was people who were in my reality that I did know, but there was everything was out of character. It was basically I was having disagreements and arguments with people who at the time I thought was close to. For example, Ryan Rhodes, stablemate, and Curtis Woodhouse, and Dave Caldwell. There was a lot of tensions and things that was happening. And because it was such a long time, a lot of parts, you know, main parts of the actual drama that was carrying on when I was in my coma. I know now it's not real, but I felt like I was upset by how I was treated, basically, not being trained right and not being managed and promoted correctly. And I thought that Curtis and Ryan was basically favoured and promoted better. So anyway, it ended up causing some kind of social media frenzy where I was having a lot of arguments with Ryan. And then, to cut a long story short, we ended up having a fight. So I thought it was actually Ryan that put me in the actual coma. So I thought I actually got the fight with him. Before all of this, also my dad there was a bit of a lack of altercation between Ryan and myself and some of his like goonies and friends. They was about to start a fight with me. My dad intervened, and he actually was stabbed and killed. And so it's like, I know it's not real, but it's like,
it
felt real. It felt very real. And like I said, I still have memories of that experience like I thought it was real. And I know it's not. I'm not crazy. But at the time, I thought all of that was real. So anyway, I'm going to rush forward to when I actually came out of the coma now, and I've been moved up a ward from critical.
Into high dependency.
Yeah, high dependency. And then Ryan came to visit me. And I had about 6 or 8 family members around my bed at the time. So as soon as I saw Ryan, I was in shock, because I was thinking, why is he coming to see me? I said, how is he forgiving me for what I've said and what I've done? So I asked everybody to leave around the bed that I was in. So I was paralysed at the time, more or less. So I said, Ryan, I held on to his hand and said, Ryan, I'm so sorry for everything that I've done. So sorry for the things that I've said. And I just kept on saying sorry. So now Ryan's looking at me and he's like looking all puzzled, thinking, what is this guy talking about? What's he talking about? I could see like a bit of a daze on his face, was like in shock. And then he says, you got nothing to worry about. You got nothing to worry about. So I'm like thinking, how is he forgiving me? So he says, oh, nothing to worry about. I know it sounds crazy, but it's just, I don't know.
Did you think your dad was dead at this point?
I thought he was dead. I thought he was gone. I thought he was gone as well. But when I was coming out of the coma as well, this is how my mind was all frazzled, because my dad was also there. But and I was thinking, my mind was just in bits. It was just all, it's mad, it's crazy. But at the time, I thought I was actually talking to people. This is when I woke up from a coma. I thought I was actually talking to people, not until probably about 6 weeks. No, it was about 3 weeks later. Then I realised I wasn't talking, because I had a conversation with my mum, and she was saying, "Oh, you wouldn't." I said to her, "I wouldn't enjoy if you was a a patient side of me because I said, you're too annoying. You keep on asking me to repeat the same things over and over again. So you're annoying. And she says, why? When have I done that? I says, well, when I was in the bed, you kept on saying, son, say I love you. Say I love you. And I said, I kept on saying it. I said, I love you. I said, I do love you. And she said to me, Jerome, you didn't say a word. But I remember the conversation, which was real. I remember the conversation that I had with her. And she was saying, you didn't say nothing. But it's just my mind was telling me that I was actually speaking when I wasn't. So I was trying, at that point, I know I was trying to trying to communicate, but it just wasn't effective. It just wasn't right. But the mind is a powerful thing. The brain is, I don't know, it is a powerful thing. So, you know, when it's trying to protect itself, I think. Because my body, when I was in that coma, my body was trying to recover when I'm not alert. And I don't know, it's crazy. It's crazy. I'm blessed to be alive still. So it's one of the main things.
Since then, how much of him have you got back?
Good question.
It's hard to say. It's kind of the same, but tweaked a little bit.
In what way?
Just, I don't know. It's hard work sometimes. Just like everyday things, like, you know, you take for granted. I'd say to you, go to the shop and, you know, get me some coffee and some bread. You come back with coffee and bread, but he can forget, like, and I have to keep repeat. What are you going for? You know, or like this morning I sent me to bread. So what are you going to the shop for? Just have, you know, little things like that. Have to repeat, you know, things. And I don't know. I think I look out for him more now than before, probably, because I don't know. It's not like a role reversal, but like when you're in a relationship, it's the man that's the more stronger one that kind of looks after everyone, if that makes sense. But I feel like it's me now that kind of keeps everybody in check.
Because I mean, when you think of fighters that have had brain damage, and you look at fighters like Michael Watson or Pritchard Colon, Abdisalamov, Edward Gutnecht. I mean, when you meet Jerome, he's incredibly with it, completely coherent. Your speech is as far as we can tell, fine. But I guess there's a lot more to it that people maybe can't see or can't hear. So how do you feel in yourself in terms of what's there and what's missing compared to before the fight?
See, to myself, I know, I've acknowledged now that I am different from how I was before. Because when it first happened, I was trying to prove to everyone that I'm exactly the same. I can do everything the same. But I wasn't aware of my actual, the deficits that I was actually dealing with. Because I looked in the mirror. The only thing, I just see a big crater in my head. Because I had a year without the skull on my head, the skull on my head. So I knew that was a problem. And I know I was being treated for epilepsy and things like that. But beside that, I thought I could do every single thing the same. My thought process was the same. But as time went by, I realised I wasn't. Making mistakes, being impulsive, being
the
forgetful.
decision-making, he struggles with that.
Fatigue, just being drained, staying up till not even sleeping, not being clean, do you know what I mean? Just these little things that were just sort of things that just weren't right.
Is there physically any differences?
Physically, all left-hand side weakness. Got a blind spot on my left eye. It's physically that way, but cognitively, it's like brain, memory, short-term memory. And it's just, what is it, like neuro fatigue and physical fatigue that it can
pain and insomnia, isn't it?
Yeah,
your pain and
pain
insomnia
is
really
excruciating.
Kicks in.
But it's just, it's art. You know, when you share your vulnerabilities, it's a bit difficult because you don't want to. As a boxer, you don't want to come across as being weak. I don't mourn about things like that. It's just things that I've learned to deal with for so much amount of time. These problems that I've got now, I never had them before. So I know that I'm proud of myself that I'm managing it, and I'm finding different ways to tackle different things. And there's not a day that goes past that I can forget. You know, the what's the word? I can't forget the fight, because the aftermath still stays with me every single day. So there's always something that I need to take care of, something that I need to manage a little bit better, something that I need to, you know, just, I don't know. Things are not straightforward with life at the moment. So it's just a continuous thing.
That like self-reflection is not easy, because fighters are the best liars in the world when it comes to, you always have to say your camp's gone great. You always have to say you weren't injured, I haven't been hurt. And you get so used to that actually it's the one sport where as a fighter, you rarely admit the things that are wrong. So in that situation, it must have been hard to come to terms with that you weren't the same guy as you were before.
Yeah, very difficult, very difficult. And I battled with myself a lot. And I spent a lot of time like in solitude with myself, just, I don't know, just, it's like having a little mini breakdown kind of thing. It's just trying to just comprehend every single thing that was happening and trying to just be real with yourself. But it's also trying to find out which kind of people you can actually speak to. And it's like, I don't know, it is very difficult. It is very difficult to try and understand and explain. Because when you are being, I don't know, like I said, when your vulnerabilities are there, it's hard, it is very difficult to try and ask for help or try and, I don't know.
Do you think talking about it has helped, or like I know a lot of people like to keep things inside, but do you think like just showing your emotions and letting it all out there, has that helped you, do you think?
Do you know what? Definitely. Being able to, when I've been able to actually communicate what I was actually going through, it's taken some time, but when I've been able to actually speak to people and say how things are, it has helped, because it just gives me I acknowledge the things that are right, I acknowledge the things that are wrong, and I also acknowledge about the things that I can actually do to do something, to try and correct the things that are wrong, if that makes sense. It's like a bit of therapy. It is therapy when you're talking about certain things, and it helps with healing and management and coping. It's just different kind of coping strategies.
I mean, you've spoken about wanting to kind of do a little bit of advising maybe to younger fighters, and I guess, I mean, I'm not to put words in your mouth, but it must be important to you to make the next generation aware of the real risks that are inherent in the sport, right?
I think so.
The more knowledge, the better.
It can't do any harm, can it?
No.
And there's many sides.
To open eyes up, you know, because there is a lot of young lads, and I think the more boxing, to me, it's more of a show business. It's, you know, it's every young boy's dream, isn't it, really, to go out in the big fights and, you know, walk through that crowd to your music and, you know, people cheer. It's probably, I mean, not for me, because I would never do that. But I can see how young lads would sway to that. And, you know, like I've spoken before in the past, you know, the lifestyle that comes with it. If you do make it, it's probably quite a nice lifestyle. You do get your pick of your cars. You do, you know, have nice holidays. You do, you know, life probably is quite good for you if you make it. But there are very few that make it.
Yeah, I would
very
agree
few.
with that. And young kids see the glitz and the glam, and they think that that's going to happen.
From it.
They don't see having
They
to
don't
shift
see
tickets and
this kind of life afterwards.
I think then,
and I think that's what every boy needs their eyes opening to. And like I said, my middle son that's 14, he's nattered and nattered and nattered to do it. And he's like, I'll train him. I'm like, no. And I'm dead against it. I cannot stand it. And he's begged me so much because he just wants to socialise with his friends, because all his friends are doing it. So I gave in a couple of weeks ago and said, right, you can go, but you're only doing it for the fitness side. There's absolutely no way you're competing. I'm not going through all that again. And I was kind of hoping he didn't like it.
But your face is telling me.
It's 2 weeks in and he wants to go more and more. And I'm just thinking.
How do you feel about it?
It's mixed, because I see the many sides to boxing and there's many positives to it. So the training side of boxing and the discipline that it takes to actually keep on going to the gym, doing the training, listening to instructions, doing all that kind of thing can be a very beneficial thing, a very good thing as well. So I think that aspect of it is a good thing. But I would be dead set against him fighting, competing. I won't want him to compete. But it's a difficult one, because if you really wanted to do it... And he's quite a headstrong kind of boy as well. If he wants to do it, he'll do it.
But even without what has happened to you, I think even myself, knowing how tough a sport it is and how serious it is, and how serious you have to be to do well. I have a young boy who's 4. Mm-hmm. I know at some point he's going to ask me, can he join a boxing club? I don't know what I'm going to say. I would rather he didn't do it, but...
I think every parent would.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think when it hits home as well, when it actually happens in your family, I think you're just 100% no way. Whereas if this maybe wouldn't have happened to him, maybe I wouldn't have been as dead against it. Maybe I'd have let him go to gym with him and train with him and,
Yeah. But it's one of these things that would be, if he does decide to do something like that, we would make, and he was adamant about it, we'd have to make sure he did every single thing right. So tell him everything, what the good things and the bad things about it, to make sure that he can prepare himself diligently for whatever he chooses to do. Not give him any illusions about grandeur, about all these different kinds of things. Just have to say it straight how it is. Do you know what I mean? But it's just... There's risk. I like to say in life there's risk to everything. To a lot of things that you do, there's many risks. And some things carry more risks. Yeah. So it's just, it's life, isn't it? So it's just one of these things you have to sometimes take chances if you want to be successful.
Part of the paradox of boxing is that you've got, governing bodies trying to make it as safe as possible, trying to reduce the risks as much as possible, but got to a point now where how can you make a sport much safer when the objective is to punch your opponent in the head? I don't think you can. Well, it's impossible to make it ever completely safe. Even in amateur boxing, which is much more regulated, they wear safer gloves and stuff. There's injuries that happen in that sport, and I think a lot has been done, but there can probably still be a little bit more that can be done to help make it safer. Certainly, we've seen the changes after McClellan and Watson with them having sort of medics and ambulances and things on site as standard. I know one of the things that you guys have struggled with has been the kind of aftermath of the recovery process. And then one of the things you talked about is counselling would have been helpful.
Support, just general support, the state that he came when we left rehab, he didn't know what he was facing. Like I was saying to you earlier, the first time I took him out shopping, we went late at night, there wasn't many people around. He just didn't cope. They don't prepare them. You leave rehab.
Distraction and they don't see properly and things like that.
Prepare people for the life after. You're in these hospitals and these rehab places, it's a safe environment. Kind of everybody's in the same kind of boat, really. They've all got injuries. You're in a bubble. Step them outside the front door and you're back into reality, and they don't do well.
True. I was talking to John Denham from Boxing News. There's a good article a couple of weeks ago and by Matt Christie. This guy called Dave Harris, former fighter and promoter, that's got an initiative that's starting to gather a lot of pace and some good funding. It's called Ringside Rest and Care. So for those of you, if you want to check it out, you know, to ringsiderestandcare.org. It's actually essentially the end goal is to have a centre of refuge for fighters who maybe were in your position 5 years ago that can come and receive cost-free treatment, rehabilitation for as long as they need. Something like that would have been great.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Perfect.
Yeah.
And something like that, it must be good news to hear that something like that's potentially on the horizon as well. It's of course reliant on funding and donations. So if anybody's listening to this or watching, and you want to head to the website and have a look at that, because I think it's a sport that is maybe lacking in care after retirement. We know the problems that boxers can fall into when they run out of money. That's one aspect of it, but of course yours is a very specific instance that's affected a small number of people but has affected them forever.
Yeah, that's true.
As well, these fighters have a lot of them have day jobs. They have families. When something like this happens, they can't work. They can't support the families. What they're supposed to do.
Pressure on you then?
Very much.
Pressure on you as well for not being able to feel like
you feel less of a man, less of a person at times. When dealing with it, it's the things that I used to do before. I was just setting up my own business. I had everything in place, and then this happened. I thought I could revisit that, but the issues that I deal with, it makes it very difficult to actually do that. I thought I'd try it, but it was just too much overload. My brain was working too much. It gets you down, so it affects you mentally as well. So it's just, when you don't have them resources in you, and the capabilities at the moment, and you're trying to I'm rebuilding, so I'm still rebuilding and adapting, but because not everything's there, it's very difficult to actually commit to certain things, because you're thinking one day, you'll be able to do this right, and then the next day, you're not able to do everything to the best of your ability and do it correct. That makes sense. That's where it's very difficult, very hard to actually deal with.
What is your relationship with boxing at the minute? Do you still love it? Do you hate it?
I've got a love-hate relationship with it. That's what everyone says. I love boxing. I love the training side of it. I've always been interested in how people move and how they train, and that kind of side of things. That's fascinating to me still. I watch some of the big fights. I watch some of the big fights. I don't go to a lot of the shows at the moment, because it still brings back different kind of memories when I go there. But if a friend is fighting, I definitely make my way to support them. But other than that, I watch it on TV now and again. I'm not as invested in it.
Yeah.
Well, that's quite difficult, but it's the truth.
What's your relationship with it as the other half of a?
Don't like it.
No.
No. And I remember having a conversation with Ross Birkinshaw at the time, because he was quite supportive when he was in hospital, and he was like you, deciding whether he was going to retire or he was going to take another fight, and we spoke quite a lot about it, and I just said to him, is it worth it? Because he kind of saw we were at hospital with us. He came up most days to come and see me and come and see him. And not long after that, he chose to retire.
That was through injury, though, I think. For this.
Yeah, but it's when we had the conversation with him, he said, because like everybody, you don't think it's going to happen to someone it's not going to be you, but like Curtis Woodhouse saw it firsthand, Ryan Rose, obviously, Ross, they were friends with him. They never thought for a minute it'd be like he is, how he was left. So I think because they were quite close to him, and obviously they trained with him, they sparred with him, they saw him on a daily basis, they saw him how he was, to how that fight left him afterwards, it opened their eyes as well, I think. And I think they found it harder to justify, can they put their families through it?
I think on the flip side of that though, because I know kids are still deciding to fight and compete in different
Toys,
sports.
don't they?
Yeah, but
I
think it'll give them more cause to actually train that much harder, because they know that. Do you know what I mean?
It does happen.
These things can happen.
It does happen.
So there'll put more things into place. They'll be more organised, I'd imagine, because that's one of the requirements, and some people neglect that.
Talking about guys like Curtis Woodhouse, I was going to ask this question because I don't really know him personally, but you seem to be his friend, and like he's talking about this BKB and stuff, and how do you feel about that? Do you think?
Do you know, like I say, he's his own man. It's one of these things. He's aware of his own body. He's aware of his achievements. He's got his own mind. Do you know what I mean? So the choice is all down to him. Do you know what I mean? If he actually wants to compete and try and be successful in that other sport, because he's a very competitive person. So I think he knows what he's letting himself in for. But at the end of the day, it's his choice. You know, whether to do it.
It's not easy listening to this, and as somebody that's kind of contemplating their future in sport, how does this sort of make you feel? What your final thoughts after hearing all this?
It hasn't been easy to listen to, if I'm being honest, and I think the fighter is often the last person to know when it's time to hang them up, and I think that's the importance of like having a good team around you. Personally, myself, I just feel like I don't want to go out on a fight like that, and I feel like I can still win big fights and big names, and that's why I want to continue. Like I was speaking to you earlier, like I was a retired fighter in the changing room after the Warrington loss, but I've changed my mind. My wife isn't happy, as I'm sure you can imagine. She's told me she'd rather I don't box and I do retire. She's told me she'll never go and watch me again, which is understandable as well. But as a fighter, I just feel like I've still got more to give. But then you're trying to weigh it up. I have 2 young kids, and your health is your wealth. You know what I mean?
You've got to decide what's right for you and your family, because it's not just you that's going in that ring.
Yeah.
It's your partner, your kids, your family. They're all there.
Yeah.
It's going to affect all of them as well. So.
But like I say, there's a risk to everything. You know what I mean?
There is.
The risk is there, but you just have to make sure when you're training, you're doing everything right. You don't leave no stone unturned. And then that's a massive incentive and motivation for the people, for fighters to actually take on board when they're actually taking, when they're deciding to go into that ring. They need to make sure that they're prepared correctly, because these accidents. I was prepared correctly in that fight. I did everything right. I made sure that I was fit. If I wasn't, I don't think I'll be alive now.
I think
that's one of a massive thing why I'm here speaking to you, because this very idea of the injury. If my body wasn't, if I wasn't as young, if I wasn't as fit, if I wasn't as strong, if I didn't have that will to survive, I wouldn't be here still. So I put that a lot down to my training. So, because many people, they could slip down the stairs, slip in a bath, and I get this type of injury. I have a car crash. When I was in the hospital, there was nobody from a boxing gym that entered a boxing competition and sustained that kind of type of injury in there. And many people come out of it very differently. But I definitely do believe it was down to how I prepared for that fight. Do you know what I mean? Because it can happen to any fighter. Any fighter, when they go in the ring, get caught wrong, just burst a blood vessel or whatever it is in the brain.
It can happen after the fight.
Yeah.
When you've left the ring and you can have a slow bleed. It can happen, and it does happen. And it happens more than it should.
Agreed. Well, thank you so much for sort of bearing your souls for us. Not easy, I know I could see at points there, but glad you're here and lovely to speak to you and hear your story. And I guess we just wish you all the best with with your recovery from here on in. Just hope
thank
that
you.
every day, week and month gets a little bit better, and you get the help that you need. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And thank you at home for watching and listening. TKO round 4 here on Joe, together with 32 Red, done and dusted, and an important one as well. Really appreciate your support and feedback. You can get in touch with us using the hashtag TKO on social media. Huge thanks to Carl, Jerome and Michelle for sharing your thoughts with us and for having us in your home, and for you for watching. So we'll see you again in 7 days' time.
You've been watching TKO on Joe, together with 32 Red.